close your eyes and let's drift back to life-changing paradoxes. As the world quiets down, imagine a strange little sentence floating in the darkness above you. It's short, kind of smug. It reads, "This sentence is false." And just like that, your brain trips over itself and quietly begins to scream. Tonight, let's wander through the most delicious logical knots and philosophical faceplants that humans have ever imagined. Softly, slowly. Hey guys, tonight we are falling asleep to paradoxes. Not the kind that just make you say, huh? The kind that chase logic into corners and make even professional philosophers go lie down with a juice box. You probably won't get it, but that's okay. These aren't here to be solved. They're here to be wondered about, like weird tattoos on the universe's ankle. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. I love seeing how many cozy minds are floating out there around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. So back to that sentence. This sentence is false. Seems innocent enough, but stare at it too long, and your sense of reality gets gently disassembled. If the sentence is true, then what it says must be the case. It must be false. But if it's false, then it isn't true. But if it isn't true, that confirms it's false, which makes it true. You're trapped. The loop closes. The logic eats its own tail. This is the classic liar paradox, and it's been annoying thinkers for thousands of years. The Greek philosopher Epimenides is credited with one of the oldest versions. He was from Crete and supposedly said, "All Cretans are liars," which is either refreshingly honest or impressively unhelpful. You hear this paradox and want to fix it. Maybe it's just wordplay. Maybe it's meaningless. But nope. This tiny sentence breaks the rules of how we define truth. In math, logic, even computer programming, self-reference like this can lead to disastrous loops, infinite regress, or the haunting blue screen of "I don't wanna." In fact, the liar paradox shows up in Gödel's incompleteness theorems, which basically say that in any consistent mathematical system, there are truths that can't be proven within the system. That's like building a perfectly sound spaceship that can't tell you whether it's flying or falling. Scientists still argue whether paradoxes like these are flaws in language or windows into something deeper, like truths that exist beyond what logic can pin down. Is the liar paradox a bug in our thinking or a feature of reality? Here's a fun twist. Modern logicians try to tame this paradox with truth hierarchies, saying some statements are about other statements, not about themselves. But then people invented sentences like, "This sentence is not provable," and the whole house of cards fell down again. And in computer science, these loops aren't just theoretical. Ever heard of an infinite loop that crashes a program? Same flavor. Self-referencing systems with no way out. So tonight, let your mind spin for a bit in this loop. You're not here to fix it, just to let it spiral gently in the dark, like a logical lava lamp, flickering with meaning, then nonsense, then meaning again. And while the sentence tells you it's false, and being false makes it true, and being true makes it false again, you just smile, exhale, and float, because this, friend, is the kind of mystery that doesn't need solving. It just needs dreaming. You drift forward now, carried by logic that flickers like candlelight, steady for a moment, then shifting with the breeze of thought. And ahead of you, lies a motionless arrow, a foot frozen mid-step, and a question that has tripped minds since ancient Greece. How do you ever get anywhere when you always have to get halfway first? Welcome to Zeno's paradox, where motion itself becomes suspicious. Imagine this. You're walking toward the door. The door's 10 feet away. Before you reach it, you must travel half the distance, 5 feet. Easy. Then half of what remains, 2.5 feet. Then half of that, 1.25 feet. Then half again. Then again, forever. Always a halfway left to go. So in theory, you never arrive. You just keep halving your distance, shrinking your steps into oblivion. So how did you ever make it to the bathroom? This is Zeno of Elea's famous paradox of motion, first posed around 2,500 years ago. And he wasn't playing around. He was trying to show that motion, and by extension, change, was an illusion, that nothing really moved, that all of experience might be a kind of illusion our minds stitch together. Wild, right? The mainstream fact is, this paradox helped lay the groundwork for calculus, centuries later. Calculus, that brilliant branch of math, gave us a way to deal with infinite sums that still add up to something finite. Mathematicians now explain Zeno's paradox with convergent series, 5 plus 2.5 plus 1.25 plus, eventually equals 10. Movement makes sense again. Crisis averted. But is it? Scientists still argue whether Zeno's paradox is just a linguistic trick or a clue about the nature of time and space. Maybe space isn't infinitely divisible. Maybe there's a smallest unit, like the Planck length, below which movement doesn't work the way we think. Maybe time doesn't flow smoothly, but ticks forward in tiny blips. If that's true, your motion is not a smooth path. It's a quantum stutter step. And then there's the quirky side. Zeno didn't stop with just one paradox. He had a whole greatest hits album. There's Achilles and the Tortoise, where the fast runner never overtakes the slow one because he always has to reach the point where the tortoise was. There's the Arrow Paradox, where a flying arrow is motionless at every single instant in time, because at any single moment, it isn't changing position. Each of these is designed to make your brain whisper, wait, but... Now, imagine your own thoughts as you walk. Each moment a step forward, each idea half-formed, followed by another and another, shrinking towards some unreachable endpoint of complete understanding. Zeno's logic doesn't just apply to your legs, it applies to your mind. You're always halfway to an epiphany, never quite there. But here's the lovely irony. In the real world, you do reach the door. Every time. Your legs don't care about converging series. They just move. Your brain doesn't care about infinite halves. It just believes, decides, walks. So let your breath slow now. You've already traveled 1,000 halves in your lifetime, crossed infinite midpoints, tiptoed through Zeno's doubts without even noticing. Maybe you don't need to solve motion. Maybe it's enough to just move, because the journey does complete. You do arrive. Even if, somewhere deep in philosophy's basement, Zeno's still pacing nervously, wondering if he's getting anywhere at all. You turn a quiet corner now, deeper into the maze of thought, and there it is, a ship, rocking gently in a harbour. Not a grand vessel, just old wood and rope, weathered sails, maybe a creaky wheel. But every year, a plank rots, a mast weakens, a beam snaps, and one by one, each part is replaced, until one day, none of the original parts remain, and the question drifts up, is it still the same ship? This is the ship of Theseus, a paradox as old as sailing and just as slippery. Theseus, the legendary Greek hero, had a ship so revered that it was preserved in a dock by replacing each part when it decayed. Eventually, every single component had been swapped out. Not one original piece remained. So is that still Theseus's ship? At first, it feels like a trick. Of course it is. It's been maintained. It never stopped existing. It was preserved in motion, not destroyed. The identity lived on through its continuity, right? But then a philosopher asks, what if we kept all the old parts and reassembled them? Now we have two ships, one made entirely of new parts, maintained over time, one made of the original materials, lovingly pieced back together. Which one is the real Theseus's ship? Welcome to the paradox of identity through change. The more you stare, the less solid anything feels. And then it hits you. This isn't just about boats, it's about you. You, dear listener, are the most personal ship of Theseus that ever existed. Every cell in your body is replaced over time. Your skin sheds, your bones regenerate, even your memories shift. That cringy middle school moment you remember so clearly. The memory has rewritten itself over the years, altered slightly every time you recalled it. Are you still you? Mainstream science tells us the adult body has entirely new cells compared to childhood, except maybe some neurons and eye lenses. But nearly everything else has been swapped out. You are not made of what you were, and yet you feel continuous. Quirky detail? In Japan, there's a centuries-old tradition of repairing broken pottery with gold, kintsugi. The broken item becomes more valuable, not less. Its history becomes part of its identity. Maybe Theseus's ship, patched with time, was more Theseus than ever. Scientists still argue whether identity is rooted in structure, material, memory, continuity, or something else entirely. If we upload your brain into a computer, exact memories, perfect consciousness, is that you? What if we do it twice? Now there are two yous arguing over which one gets your favorite coffee mug. This is where thought experiments start to taste like sci-fi. But they matter. They ask where we draw the line between persistence and transformation, between who we were and who we are. And yet, your heartbeat still hums, your breath still flows. You are, somehow, you, even as each part fades and is renewed. So tonight, imagine yourself not as one unchanging object, but as a flowing river, a process, a soft current of memory, breath, and identity, constantly rebuilt with quiet grace. The ship of you sails on, part memory, part future, part now, and all of it is real. You step forward now, not just through time, but into it. The path beneath your feet twists, curls backward, and loops on itself like a ribbon in slow motion. And somewhere in that looping path, you meet yourself, or your younger self, or maybe a version of yourself that shouldn't exist anymore. Welcome to the elegant mess of time travel paradoxes, where reality gets tongue-tied, and cause and effect start whispering behind each other's backs. Let's begin with a classic, the grandfather paradox. You travel back in time. Let's say it's to the early 1900s. You accidentally, or deliberately, depending on how dramatic you're feeling, prevent your grandfather from meeting your grandmother. No granddad, no parent. No parent, no you. But if you were never born, who went back to do the sabotage in the first place? Congratulations. You've just erased yourself, but you're still standing there, looking very smug in your steampunk time travel outfit. Logic has officially left the chat. Mainstream science is cautious here. General relativity allows for certain solutions in which time loops are theoretically possible. Things like closed time-like curves. These are paths through space-time that circle back on themselves, like cosmic racetracks where cause and effect sprint side by side. But they're deeply problematic. For one thing, they don't play nice with free will. If you go back in time, can you actually change anything? Or is everything already locked in? Some physicists say paradoxes are impossible because the universe would somehow self-consistently prevent them. You might try to stop your grandfather, but fate, or a banana peel, gets in the way. This is known as the Novikov self-consistency principle, and it says that time travel can happen, but anything you do in the past was already part of the past. You were always meant to show up with that confused expression and weird 2040 haircut. You can't change history. You are history. Quirky detail? There are stories of time travelers who accidentally become their own grandparents. Yes, it's called a Bootstrap Paradox, where something causes itself. Like handing your younger self a book that you only ever knew because your future self gave it to you. Where did the book originally come from? It didn't. It looped into existence. Zero origin. Pure weirdness. Scientists still argue whether time travel is truly possible or just a mathematical mirage, something the equations allow but reality vetoes. Quantum mechanics throws even more chaos into the mix. Maybe every time you change something, a new timeline branches off, and you just hop into a new reality while your original one keeps trucking along, unfazed. Welcome to the many worlds interpretation, where paradoxes are avoided because every possibility happens somewhere. Infinite timelines, infinite yous, infinite questionable decisions. Right now, you are moving through time the traditional way, 1 second per second, courtesy of entropy. But imagine if you could step out of that stream, backward, sideways. Would you visit a moment of regret, a perfect day, a second chance? Or would you get stuck in a loop, trapped forever in a reality that can't decide if you're supposed to exist? For now, you're safe in the present. The future is unwritten. The past is remembered, but unreachable. And in between them, you, resting quietly in a time stream you can't bend, but can still dream about. You lie still now, floating not just in the present, but slightly slower than someone else, moving far away near the speed of light. Because time doesn't pass the same for everyone. Not if Einstein had anything to say about it. This is the twin paradox, a thought experiment where your own brother becomes your younger brother by aging slower in space. Here's how it works. Imagine you and your twin start out the same age. You send your twin on a deep space mission traveling close to the speed of light. He zips around for what feels like, say, 5 years to him. He's sipping space coffee and wondering if you remembered his birthday. Then he returns to Earth. And there you are, decades older. Not because of cryosleep. Not because of space-time wizardry. Just because of time dilation. A very real and measured effect from Einstein's theory of special relativity. According to this theory, the faster you move through space, the slower you move through time. It's not just poetic, it's math. Clocks on fast-moving objects actually tick more slowly than stationary ones. We've tested this with atomic clocks on airplanes, satellites, and speeding particles in labs. Your GPS would fail without correcting for it. Even the GPS in your phone uses relativistic math to tell you where to find tacos. Modern miracles. So back to your twin. For him, it's just a short trip. For you, it's a long, earthbound wait. When he lands, his body is younger. His skin hasn't aged as much. He's a living paradox out of sync with your timeline. And here's the quirky twist. This isn't science fiction. It's testable physics. We've seen fast-moving particles, muons from cosmic rays, live longer than they should, simply because they're moving so quickly. They're decaying more slowly as they speed through Earth's atmosphere, defying normal lifespans thanks to relativity. But wait, you say. Doesn't the twin in the spaceship see you as moving instead? Shouldn't you be the one who ages slower from his perspective? Good question. Scientists still argue over how to clearly explain this without oversimplifying. But the key is acceleration. The space-traveling twin has to turn around at some point. Change direction, slow down, speed up again. That breaks the symmetry. He experiences a change in velocity, and with it, a different slice of space-time. That's what makes him the younger one when the twins reunite. And now, imagine that's you, alone in a spacecraft, drifting near the edge of light speed. You watch stars blur past like smeared candlelight. You read a book, you blink. And decades have passed for everyone you knew. Earth is older, friends are older, maybe gone. But you, still floating, a little behind on birthdays, a little out of sync. This paradox makes you wonder, what is time if it flows differently for different people? If a year isn't always a year, and what about the choices you'd make, knowing that stepping into space is stepping outside the shared rhythm of humanity? For now, you're still here, aging the old-fashioned way, 1 second at a time. But just knowing time can stretch and fold makes every moment feel a little more precious. Even this one, where you lie, quiet and still, as the seconds pass around you, at exactly your pace. You lie there, eyes closed, body soft, brain gently drifting, and in this space between awake and asleep, something strange is happening. You're both sleeping and not, until someone checks. Welcome to the infamous, misunderstood, and wildly over-referenced paradox of Schrödinger's cat, where your unconscious mind and a theoretical feline are having a quantum identity crisis. Let's unpack this cozy catastrophe. Erwin Schrödinger, the delightfully annoyed Austrian physicist, created this paradox in the 1930s to critique the weirdness of quantum mechanics, specifically the idea that particles exist in a superposition of states until they're observed. It wasn't meant to be taken literally, but well, here we are. And now everyone has a t-shirt with a confused cartoon cat. Here's the setup. You've got a cat. It's in a sealed box. Inside the box is a radioactive atom, a Geiger counter, and a vial of poison. If the atom decays, a purely random quantum event, the detector triggers the poison and the cat. Well, you know. But quantum rules say the atom exists in both decayed and not decayed states until observed, which means the poison is both released and not, and the cat is both dead and alive, until you open the box. At that moment, the wave function collapses into a single outcome, and you find the cat either meowing or not. So what's the paradox? It's not about feline safety. It's about what's real before we look. Is the cat actually both dead and alive? Or is the superposition just math describing our ignorance? Mainstream fact, quantum mechanics says superpositions are real. Particles do exist in multiple states. Electrons can be in several places. Photons can go through both slits. The math works. We've confirmed it with countless experiments. Quirky detail? We now create superpositions in labs using objects much larger than electrons, entire molecules, even small resonators. We've made quantum cats with thousands of atoms. They're not furry, but they're just as confused. Scientists still argue whether the wave function represents real physical possibilities or just a tool for predicting outcomes. Some interpretations say reality doesn't choose until measured. Others say everything branches, the many worlds interpretation, where in one timeline the cat lives, in another it doesn't, and in both, someone has to clean the box. And what is observation anyway? Does it require a conscious mind? Just interaction? Is the universe collapsing possibilities every time particles meet, or only when someone checks Instagram? Now picture yourself in the box, not morbidly, just theoretically. Your consciousness in a superposition, asleep and awake, dreaming and still alert, until someone checks on you, or maybe until you check on yourself. Until then, both states exist. A cognitive hum of duality. Every night, when you close your eyes, you slip into that uncertainty. The border between sleep and wakefulness is not sharp. You float in a blend of possibilities, aware but not, dreaming but grounded, real and unreal. This paradox isn't meant to frustrate. It's meant to remind you, the universe is weirder than it looks. It doesn't run on common sense. It runs on probabilities, uncertainty, and yes, occasionally, metaphorical cats in boxes. So tonight, as your breath deepens and your body settles, feel no need to collapse into any one state too quickly. Let yourself linger in both worlds a while longer, drifting between questions and comfort. You're not quite asleep. You're not quite awake. And maybe, for now, that's exactly where you belong. You rest now under the full weight of thought, and somewhere in the cosmic corner of your mind, a boulder looms, immovable, heavy, silent, and yet, someone dares ask the impossible. Can an all-powerful being create a rock so heavy that even they cannot lift it? Welcome to the Omnipotence Paradox, where divine power folds in on itself and logic quietly slinks out the back door. It sounds like a riddle, like something you'd hear at a late-night dorm debate fueled by questionable energy drinks. But this question has haunted theology and philosophy for centuries, and not because of the rock, it's because of what it implies. If the answer is yes, then the being has created a rock they can't lift, meaning there's something they cannot do, so they're not all-powerful. But if the answer is no, if they can't create the rock, then again, there's something they can't do. Either way, omnipotence takes a hit, and the paradox just sits there, smugly. Mainstream thinkers have long debated the nature of omnipotence. Does being all-powerful mean being able to do anything, even things that are self-contradictory? Or does it mean being able to do anything that's logically possible? Some say asking if an all-powerful being can do the logically impossible, like making a square circle or a married bachelor, is just nonsense. A misuse of language, like trying to divide by zero and wondering why your calculator gives you attitude. Others argue that true omnipotence must include the ability to override logic itself. If you're bound by logic, are you really limitless? Scientists still argue whether logic is a law of the universe or a human construct we invented to avoid chaos and mayonnaise on pancakes. Here's a quirky twist. Some theologians propose paraconsistent logic, a system where contradictions can exist without imploding the whole framework. In this logic, a being could both create the rock and lift it, even if that breaks normal rules. Schrödinger's dumbbell, if you will. There's also the idea that omnipotence doesn't mean having every power, but rather maximum power, able to do all things that are coherently possible. Kind of like saying a perfect computer can compute any problem. But it doesn't mean it can cook spaghetti. Category matters. And now, let's pull this into the personal. You, right now, lying still, might feel powerless in some ways. Maybe there's a problem in your life that feels too heavy to lift, or a goal that feels like a rock you placed there yourself. The paradox invites a strange comfort. Even infinity has its limits when language gets sloppy. Power doesn't mean fixing everything at once. Sometimes it's about understanding the limits of what can be changed and accepting what simply is. So rest here, beneath your own imagined stone. Not every paradox must be solved. Some are just meant to be held, gently, curiously. Let it rest beside you, not as a challenge, but as a companion. Because in the silence of that unsolvable question, there's a strange kind of peace, and no one has to lift anything at all. You ease into the next stretch of thought, where logic wears a neat little uniform and insists everything should make perfect sense. But tucked into this town of reason is a small, tidy barbershop, and the man who shaves everyone in town who does not shave themselves. And now, the question that ruins the whole system. Who shaves the barber? This is the Barber Paradox, a mind trap so sharp and simple it can slice clean through your sanity before you even realize what's happening. Let's walk through it gently, so no one stubs a neuron. The town's rule is simple. The barber shaves everyone who does not shave themselves. If a man shaves himself, the barber leaves him alone. If a man does not shave himself, the barber steps in. So what about the barber? If he shaves himself, then by definition, he must not shave himself, because he only shaves those who don't. But if he doesn't shave himself, then according to the rule, he must shave himself. Boom, loop, trap. The system implodes. This paradox proposed by Bertrand Russell is a playful simplification of a deeper problem in mathematical logic known as Russell's paradox. It involves the idea of a set of all sets that do not contain themselves. If such a set exists, then either it contains itself, which it mustn't, or it doesn't, in which case it must. Infinite headache. Mainstream impact. This little logical hiccup shattered early 20th century mathematics. It showed that naive set theory, the idea that you can just define any collection of things and call it a set, led to contradictions. The whole foundation of math started to wobble. So mathematicians had to rebuild logic itself with stricter rules. Set theory got a serious makeover, complete with rigorous axioms designed to keep things like the Barber Paradox from happening. Math, now with safety scissors. But the real charm of the barber is in how deceptively normal it feels. It starts with simple rules and ends with a total meltdown, which is oddly familiar if you've ever tried to fix your sleep schedule, build IKEA furniture, or explain your Wi-Fi setup to your grandparents. Quirky twist. Paradoxes like this pop up in programming too. In software development, self-referential logic can crash systems or create infinite loops. Ever heard of recursion gone rogue? The computer equivalent of the barber just put your CPU in a hammock and walked off. Scientists still argue whether self-reference is inherently unstable, or if we just haven't found the right framework yet. Maybe one day we'll develop a logic system that comfortably includes the barber without deleting the universe. But not tonight. Now, let's step outside that strange little barbershop into the cool breeze of acceptance. Not everything must make sense on command. Sometimes things loop, ideas collapse inward, language ties itself in knots, and you don't need to untangle it all right now. Just know that some paradoxes are like lullabies for the brain. Soft, circular, repetitive. They start somewhere, end nowhere, and rock you gently in between. So if the barber's out of the picture, and the mirror fogs just right, maybe, just maybe, you don't need a clean answer. You just need rest. You glide now through thought so strange it feels like it was assembled by cosmic magicians on a dare. Ahead of you, a perfect ball, smooth, solid, ordinary. And yet, with the right technique, you can slice it apart and rebuild it into two identical balls of the same size. No extra material, no tricks, just math. This is the Banach-Tarski Paradox, and it's so unsettling that even mathematicians mutter under their breath when it comes up. Here's the idea. You start with a sphere, using only a finite number of cuts, 5 in fact. You divide it into oddly shaped pieces. These pieces are then rotated and rearranged to form two perfect copies of the original sphere. Same volume, same shape, same everything. It's like tearing up one apple and ending up with two apples. Sounds like a crime against physics, right? Mainstream fact. This paradox is a direct consequence of the axiom of choice, a foundational assumption in set theory. The axiom says that given any collection of sets, it's possible to choose an element from each one, even if there's no obvious rule for how. Seems harmless, but in higher dimensions it unlocks unsettling possibilities. The pieces used in Banach-Tarski aren't just irregular, they're non-measurable. That means you can't assign them a volume in any normal way. They're not slices like pie, they're pure abstraction, like dust made of numbers, unseeable and unholdable. And in our real world, made of atoms and energy limits, they couldn't be cut or reassembled. But in math, anything goes. Quirky twist? This only works in 3D space. Try it in 2D, no dice. The paradox doesn't apply to flat shapes, but in our dimension. Welcome to the theatre of the absurd. Scientists still argue whether the axiom of choice should be trusted. It leads to beautiful proofs, but also to things like Banach-Tarski. Some say it's essential. Others treat it like a math button labeled "Don't push." And if this makes you feel a little uneasy, good. That means your brain still respects reality, because physically duplicating matter from nothing violates conservation laws. Energy doesn't just pop into existence from clever slicing. Your kitchen cannot become two kitchens because you chopped a grapefruit cleverly. But think about what this does tell us. Even the clearest ideas, volume, shape, identity, can crumble when pushed to extremes. Paradoxes like Banach-Tarski aren't mistakes. They're invitations to see where logic bends, to explore where language fails, to play with thought itself. So tonight, as you lie still under your blanket, think of the world as a sphere, whole, balanced, and just weird enough to wonder, could you take it apart and end up with more than you started? Maybe you've done it already, taken yourself through heartache, loss, change, and come out more complete. Duplicated strength from broken pieces. The ball doesn't really double, not in your hands, but in your dreams. Maybe it does. And when you wake, you'll still have exactly what you need. You rest in a soft lull now, but somewhere in the back of your mind, a voice whispers, there's going to be a surprise test next week. And just like that, you're pulled into the strange riddle of expectation and its equally strange partner, certainty. Because the moment you try to predict a surprise, it stops being a surprise. Welcome to the unexpected hanging paradox, also called the surprise test paradox, a logical time bomb disguised as an innocent school announcement. Here's the setup. A teacher tells her class, "There will be a surprise test next week. You won't know which day it's coming until it arrives." Naturally, the students panic. But one clever student starts to think it through. If the test hasn't happened by Thursday night, she reasons, then it must be on Friday. But if I know it'll be on Friday, it won't be a surprise, so it can't be on Friday. So she crosses off Friday. Then she thinks, if it hasn't happened by Wednesday night, it must be Thursday. But I've already ruled out Friday, so Thursday is the only option left. Again, not a surprise. One by one, she eliminates each day. Monday through Friday. None of them can be a surprise. Therefore, the test can't happen at all. Feeling victorious, she shows up Monday, completely unprepared. And boom, surprise test. Mainstream fact. This paradox reveals a subtle contradiction between the definition of surprise and the structure of logical reasoning. The student's argument seems sound, and yet, when the test arrives on Monday, she's completely surprised. The paradox becomes real. And while it may seem like a logic problem, this oddity has implications for epistemology, the study of knowledge itself. How do we define knowing? How can you claim to know something that's inherently meant to be unknown? Where does the boundary lie between belief, certainty, and assumption? Scientists and philosophers still argue whether the paradox is about logic, language, or just overly clever teenagers. Some say it's a problem with how we interpret surprise. Others think it exposes something deeper about self-referential knowledge, how predicting your own ignorance leads to knowing, and therefore not knowing. It's also eerily similar to Gödel's incompleteness theorems, where systems can't fully explain themselves without running into contradictions. The same way you can't define a surprise without possibly ruining it by defining it. Here's the quirky detail. Real-life institutions have used this paradox to examine decision-making under uncertainty. Military strategists, economists, even game designers. The paradox reveals how humans handle risk, planning, and expectation, especially when those expectations are deliberately manipulated. Now zoom in. Picture yourself during a week like this, eyes flicking to the calendar, guessing. Monday, no Tuesday, unlikely. By Friday, you've done so much mental gymnastics you've become your own paradox. And then, bam, reality doesn't care about your logic tree. You're surprised. And that's the magic. The surprise was always possible. You just talked yourself into believing it wasn't. So tonight, as you settle in and feel the slow rhythm of your breath, let go of the need to predict everything. You don't need to guess what's coming next. The paradox reminds us, sometimes the best logic leads you away from truth, and that's okay. Not every moment needs explanation. Some things, like a test on Monday, or a feeling you didn't expect, are better felt than solved. Let them surprise you. You drift deeper now, into the velvet corridors of the infinite, and just ahead, you spot a glowing sign. Hilbert's Hotel, always open, always full, always ready. The door swings open to reveal a strange place. Impossibly long halls, room after room stretching forever. Every room has a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to infinity, and every single one is occupied. No vacancies, and yet there's always room for more. This is the Hilbert Hotel Paradox, a thought experiment by German mathematician David Hilbert, designed to illustrate how infinity doesn't behave the way normal things do. You'd think a full hotel couldn't accept new guests, but this isn't a normal hotel. Let's say a new guest shows up. Room 1 is full. Room 2, also full. So are rooms 3, 4, and 5. But Hilbert smiles, rings his little reception bell, and instructs each guest to move from room N to room N+1. The guest in room 1 moves to 2, room 2 to 3, and so on forever. Now room 1 is empty, ready for the new arrival. Mainstream fact? This is how infinite sets work. You can add to them without changing their size. You can remove elements from them, and they're still the same size. It's not a bug. It's how math defines infinity. You're not adding more to something infinite. You're just reshuffling the endless. Now imagine a bus with infinite new guests arrives. The hotel's full again, but Hilbert is ready. He tells each current guest in room N to move to room 2N. That frees up every odd-numbered room, infinitely many, for the new guests. Infinity makes room for itself. But here's where things get quirky. Imagine you remove every odd-numbered guest. Now half the hotel is empty, right? But it still contains an infinite number of guests. Infinity minus infinity equals infinity, or 0, or something undefined, depending on how you subtract. It's not just math. It's math wearing a disguise and refusing to answer questions. Scientists still argue whether these mathematical infinities reflect anything in physical reality. Is the universe infinite in size? Are there infinite particles? Can time stretch out forever? Or is infinity just a convenient fiction we use to describe something very large that we'll never truly reach? In physics, things get even weirder. Some equations spit out infinities, unhelpful, unphysical ones. That's where renormalization comes in, a method of subtracting away nonsense infinities to get results that match our observations. It's like doing math in a room full of mirrors. Eventually, you have to ignore a few reflections to make progress. Quirky twist? Infinite hotels also appear in modern cosmology. In certain models of the multiverse, you might have infinitely many universes, or infinitely many versions of you, all occupying their own strange little room, checking in for eternity. Now close your eyes and imagine yourself in room 7221, 499. The hallway stretches endlessly in both directions. Every room has a person, a life, a world. But you're still uniquely you. Your bed, your breath, your dream tonight. One version of infinity, all your own. The paradox isn't about confusion. It's about expansion, about imagining a reality where more can always be added, even when things seem full. And maybe that's you too, even when you feel full of thoughts, of emotion, of exhaustion. Maybe there's still room for one more dream, one more moment of wonder, one more quiet night in the Hotel Infinite. You sway now between possibilities, floating gently on a thought you felt before. Should I watch something else? Try a different pillow? Maybe switch careers? And just like that, you land in a modern labyrinth that's as psychological as it is philosophical. The paradox of choice. It begins with a simple truth. More options seem like a good thing. More ice cream flavors. More shows. More dating profiles, more career paths, more ways to fold a fitted sheet. Well, okay, maybe not that one. But when the choices stack up, something weird happens. Instead of feeling freedom, you feel paralysis. You scroll for 20 minutes and watch nothing. You skim 10 job listings and apply to none. You stare at 17 salad dressings in the grocery store aisle and somehow leave with frozen waffles. Mainstream research shows that as the number of options increases, Your ability to choose declines. You become overwhelmed. You second guess. You pick something and immediately wonder if something else would have been better. That's choice overload, and it's not just theory. Psychologists have tested it, documented it, and maybe even felt it during their own lunch breaks. But the real paradox is this: too much freedom can feel like a trap. You see, when you only have two choices, the one you pick feels right. You can commit. But when you have 20, regret creeps in. What if I picked wrong? What if I missed out? That fear is anticipated regret, and your brain is terrible at letting it go. Quirky detail. A famous study once gave people a sample of jams at a market. Some days with 6 options, other days with 24. More people stopped at the bigger display, but way fewer actually bought anything. Turns out, jam should be delicious, not a philosophical dilemma. Scientists still argue whether this paradox is universal or more prominent in certain cultures, particularly those that glorify individuality and consumer choice. In places where community or tradition guides decisions, the pressure to get it right might be smaller. The burden of choosing sits lighter. And here's the twist. This paradox doesn't just live in the grocery aisle. It follows you into bigger moments. Which job offer do you take? Which city do you live in? Which of your thousands of unread ebooks will you finally start reading and then abandon halfway through? You live in a world of infinite micro-decisions. And it's wonderful, but it's also exhausting. So tonight, let go of the idea that there's a perfect choice. Perfection is a myth whispered by cereal commercials and overly confident YouTube ads. The best choice is often just any choice, made fully, gently, without the burden of regret. Let yourself choose to rest. You already chose this video. You chose this moment. You chose to listen. And now, you can choose to let the other options fade. No pressure, no judgment. Just you, lying still, surrounded by softness, with nothing more to select, optimize, or reconsider. Because the only choice left is sleep. You linger now in a forest of symbols, deep in the logic woods, where ravens fly and apples shine. And somehow, both might be telling you the same thing. This is the paradox of the ravens, also known as the paradox of confirmation. It begins with a seemingly innocent idea. All ravens are black. Sure, you've probably seen ravens. Big, dark, cawing birds with a flair for drama. So if you see a black raven, that confirms the statement. Great, but here's the twist. Logic says that if all ravens are black is true, then its contrapositive must also be true. If something is not black, then it is not a raven. So when you look at a green apple and confirm it is not a raven, you've just provided evidence, however weak, that all ravens are black. Wait, what? Mainstream logic accepts this as valid reasoning. The structure of the statement is preserved. It's airtight on paper. But in practice, it feels ridiculous. You're in your kitchen, admiring a pear, and somewhere a philosopher is yelling, "Another point for the ravens." That's the paradox. Logically sound, intuitively bizarre. Quirky twist? This was introduced by the philosopher Carl Hempel in the 1940s. His goal wasn't to ruin grocery shopping, but to explore how confirmation really works in science. What counts as evidence? How do you know when something supports a theory? Because if confirming not black things are not ravens really strengthens the theory that all ravens are black, then technically every time you confirm your cat isn't a raven, you're doing your part for ornithology. But scientists still argue over whether this form of confirmation is meaningful in real-world reasoning. Does your non-raven green sock add anything useful to the data pile? Probably not. Relevance matters. Context matters. Just because something is technically evidence doesn't mean it's useful. And now, let's bring this into your night. Think of all the little things you don't see every day. All the tragedies that don't happen. The bad days that almost occurred but didn't. Each of them. Tiny confirmations that life, in some small way, stayed on track. Sometimes, it's easy to ignore what doesn't happen. To overlook the green apples of our lives because they're not dramatic or loud. But the quiet knots matter, the non-fires, the unsent emails, the friendships that didn't fall apart. You are surrounded by gentle, invisible confirmations that things are okay. Even now, especially now. So close your eyes and let the paradox rest. Somewhere out there, a raven is doing its mysterious raven things. Somewhere closer, a green apple sits peacefully in a bowl, minding its own business and confirming a universal truth. Not because it means to, just because it exists. And maybe that's the deepest comfort of all. You breathe a little slower now, nestled in the softness of the present, when someone walks in and offers you a choice. 2 boxes sit in front of you. One is transparent. It clearly contains $1,000. The other is opaque and might contain $1,000 or nothing. You may take both boxes or just the opaque one. And now, welcome to Newcomb's Paradox, where free will and prediction arm wrestle each other while your brain quietly melts. Here's how the game works. A super-intelligent predictor, let's call it Omega, has played this game 1,000,000 times before, and is almost always right. If Omega predicted you'd take only the opaque box, it put $1,000 inside it. If Omega predicted you'd take both boxes, it left the opaque one empty, so you'd walk away with only $1,000. And the prediction has already been made. The boxes are sealed. The money, or lack of it, is already locked in. So what do you choose? Here's the dilemma. From a logical decision theory perspective, many argue you should take both boxes. The money's already in there or not. Your action can't change that. And taking both gets you an extra 1,000 no matter what. But from a predictive reasoning perspective, you should take only the opaque box, because the predictor is almost always right. People who take only one box tend to walk away millionaires. Those who take both, just $1,000. So, are you a rational agent, or are you being outsmarted by a sealed box? Mainstream fact. This paradox has sparked debate for decades among philosophers, economists, and mathematicians. It highlights a collision between 2 powerful frameworks: causal decision theory, what your action causes, and evidential decision theory, what your action signals about the world. Both feel right. Both contradict each other. Scientists still argue whether this paradox reveals a flaw in our models of free will, or simply exposes how tangled choice becomes when mixed with near-perfect prediction. Because let's be real, if Omega really knows what you'll do, is there any point in choosing? And here's where it gets wild. Newcomb's paradox isn't just a philosophical puzzle. It taps into game theory, AI behavior, and even ethics. How should we make choices if our decisions reveal information about us, even to ourselves? Quirky twist. Some have suggested that if you believe in the predictor, you should one box, because belief itself changes outcomes. Your certainty in the system, however abstract, bends the results. like a mental gravity. Now pull back. Imagine this paradox as a reflection of your own life. Every day you make choices. What to pursue, whom to trust, when to rest. Some decisions feel random. Others feel like echoes of a path already chosen. What if your choices today reflect not just your logic, but your belief in what kind of person you are? Not because the future is sealed, but because your belief shapes how you act, how others perceive you, and how your story unfolds. So tonight, forget the money. Let go of the boxes. You've already made the only real choice that matters: to rest, to reflect, to drift toward dreams with a heart full of curious questions. Omega isn't watching anymore, but your thoughts still ripple quietly into tomorrow. You sink gently now into a world of stillness, caught not in action, but in inaction. And in the hazy space between choices, you see a donkey. Not just any donkey, a perfectly rational, deeply unlucky donkey, standing between two identical piles of hay, equal in size, equal in distance, equal in tastiness. And the donkey, poor thing, just stares. Unable to choose, it starves. Welcome to Buridan's donkey, a paradox of decision-making that asks, what happens when two options are perfectly equal, and there's no reason to choose one over the other? It's a thought experiment attributed to the 14th century philosopher John Buridan. And though the donkey's fate sounds dramatic, the core issue runs deep. Perfect symmetry leads to paralysis. If there's no rational reason to choose between two options, and you rely solely on logic, you might never act at all. The donkey has no preference, no nudge, no impulse. So it dies, not for lack of food, but for lack of difference. Now replace the donkey with you, faced with two jobs, two text replies, two Netflix shows. Both good, both similar. And somehow, you spend more energy choosing than doing. Mainstream interpretation sees this as a problem of pure rationalism. In the real world, we're rarely in perfectly balanced situations, but when we feel that way, the indecision can be real and painful. Whether it's big life moves or small daily choices, overthinking in moments of equality leads to stalling, doubt, and exhaustion. Quirky twist. Some modern philosophers suggest that when faced with equal options, the act of choosing itself becomes the tiebreaker. The donkey just needs a flicker of will, not reason. A spark that says, this one. Not because it's better, just because it's chosen. Scientists still argue whether decision-making is truly rational, or whether much of it is driven by instinct, emotion, or even randomness dressed up in logic. Neuroscience shows that even in moments of careful thought, decisions often emerge before we're consciously aware of them. Your brain starts leaning left before you think you've made a decision. Maybe free will is just a clever illusion, your subconscious pulling the trigger, and your conscious mind writing the press release. But here's the comfort buried in this paradox. Indecision doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're trying, balancing values, weighing outcomes, being human, and you won't starve in the middle. Because real life doesn't require perfect reasons. It rewards action, forward motion, even imperfect steps. So tonight, if you're lying there in your own little standoff, between sleep and screen time, between worry and surrender, remember Buridan's donkey. And then be the undonkey. Choose something. Or better yet, choose nothing. Let the tension dissolve. You don't need to solve every fork in the road right now. You just need to exhale, close your eyes, and let the next step arrive on its own. Gently, quietly, like the first breath of a dream. You float now in a strange, boundless expanse. Numbers shimmer around you, not just 1, 2, 3, but infinity, that peculiar sideways 8. But this isn't just about something big. It's about something unruly. Because once you invite infinity into the room, the rules start acting very weird. This is the paradox of infinity, or more accurately, several paradoxes bundled together under one dazzling, bottomless idea. Because infinity, it turns out, doesn't behave like numbers. It's not a quantity, it's a concept, and it refuses to stay in its mathematical lane. Start here. +1 equals, so does plus 1000. Or plus, you can add to infinity, and it doesn't get bigger. It can't get bigger, which feels wrong. In most cases, if you have 10 apples and get 10 more, you now have 20. But if you have an infinite number of apples and add more, still infinite. It's like trying to pour more tea into a cup that never fills and never spills. Mainstream math handles this with precision. Georg Cantor, the father of set theory, helped us understand that there are different sizes of infinity. Yes, that's a thing. Some infinities are bigger than others. The set of natural numbers, 1 to 3, is infinite. But the set of real numbers between 0 and 1, that's even more infinite. It's uncountable. Let that melt your brain for a moment. Quirky twist. Cantor called the smaller infinity 0, Aleph null, the cardinality of countable infinity. The larger kinds, like the reals, can't even be matched 1-to-1 with the naturals. They're a higher order of infinity. There's a whole hierarchy, like royalty, but for endlessness. And then come the paradoxes. Hilbert's Hotel, which you remember, shows how infinite sets behave when reshuffled. But other paradoxes dig deeper, like Gabriel's horn, a geometric shape with infinite surface area and finite volume, meaning you could fill it with a tiny bit of paint, but you'd never have enough paint to coat the outside. It's like a cruel art project from the Twilight Zone. Or think about infinite series. Some converge, like 1 + 1 arm plus 1 core plus 1 8, adding up to 2. Others diverge, like 1 + 1 + 1 + 1, which just rockets toward infinity forever. And still others, like 1, 1 + 1, 1, those flirt with madness. Depending on how you group the numbers, they can seem to equal 0, 1, or 1/2. Scientists still argue how to interpret infinity in physics. Is the universe truly infinite, or just very big? Are time and space infinitely divisible, or is there a smallest unit, like the Planck length, below which space becomes meaningless? And what about the universe's end? Some models suggest eternal expansion, infinite time, a slow, quiet fade into endless darkness. Others suggest looping timelines, repeating eternally. Or maybe, just maybe, this infinity is an illusion, something our brains invent because they can't imagine stopping. And now, here you are, resting, breathing, held not by logic, but by warmth. You aren't infinite. You have edges, limits, a body, a mind. But inside that mind, infinity lives. Every thought you didn't finish, every dream you might still dream, every idea you can stretch just a little further. That's your infinity. So tonight, don't try to understand it. Let it swirl. Let it sing. Let it remind you that even the endless can be soft, and even infinity knows when to be quiet. You lie cradled now in the hush of continuity, and suddenly find yourself circling. A loop, a loop with no beginning, no end. Just cause and effect chasing each other around and around like cosmic Ouroboros. This is the heart of the causal loop paradox, also called a bootstrap paradox, where something causes itself, or exists without origin, or worse, arrives because it always has. Let's ease in with a story. You wake up one morning to find a mysterious book on your doorstep. It's handwritten, filled with theories, equations, and notes in your own handwriting. You read it, absorb it, study it. Years later, you publish it. It changes the world. Then, one night, older and wiser, you travel back in time and leave that very same book on your younger self's doorstep. So who wrote it? That's the paradox. The book exists, but it was never created. It has no origin. It simply loops forever. This idea, while dreamy and strange, has very real roots in theoretical physics, especially in discussions around time travel and closed time-like curves. These loops are mathematically possible in general relativity, under certain conditions. Picture space-time twisting into a donut shape where you can hop from point A to point B and circle back to point A again. Now say a scientist invents a time machine using blueprints that she received from her future self, who got them from her past self, and so on. The machine exists, but no one ever truly invented it. The knowledge came from nowhere, or everywhere. Depends how sleepy you are. Mainstream scientists acknowledge that while these loops are consistent with certain equations, we've never observed one. They seem to break causality, the bedrock of logic. Cause comes before effect. That's the deal. But in a causal loop, cause is effect, and effect is cause. Quirky twist. These paradoxes are known as bootstrap paradoxes, from the old idea of pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps, an impossible act of self-creation. And yet, in these stories, objects and information do pull themselves into existence. Scientists still argue whether causal loops are absurd, impossible, or just part of a deeper layer of reality we haven't untangled yet. Some physicists suggest quantum mechanics might self-consistently prevent contradictions. Others propose that every time a paradox could occur, a new timeline branches off, keeping the loop alive but harmless. Now pull this closer to your chest. Have you ever had an idea that felt like it came from nowhere? A thought that planted itself in your head fully formed? Maybe it was seeded by a book, a movie, a moment you've forgotten. Or maybe it looped in from your own future. Who knows? The human mind is full of loops, memories shaped by past versions of ourselves, feeding forward into future choices. Sometimes you teach yourself things without even knowing it. Sometimes you grow from knowledge you didn't realize you already had. So tonight, let yourself spiral gently into that loop, not to find a beginning, not to demand an answer, but to marvel at the mystery of self-sustaining thought, of questions that raise themselves. And if you wake with a new idea tomorrow, one that feels like it was always there, don't question it. Just smile and write it down. You settle now into the soft folds of identity, who you are, who you were, and who you might still become. But in this quiet space, a new question creeps in gently, like a breeze that smells faintly of memory. Are you still you, if everything inside you changes? Welcome to the paradoxes of identity, where the self is more like a river than a rock, always moving, yet somehow still familiar. Let's begin with your memories. They feel like anchors. Your childhood home, that vacation when your sandwich blew away. the name of your fourth grade best friend. You remember them, so they're yours. They make you you. But what if you forgot them? What if your memories began to blur, fade, or shift? Are you less you? Or just a different version? Mainstream psychology tells us that identity is fluid. Your preferences change. Your habits evolve. The you from 10 years ago might disagree with the you of today on everything from music taste to breakfast choices. And yet, you wouldn't say you've become a different person. Quirky twist? The idea of personal identity over time puzzled philosophers long before Instagram bios did. John Locke argued that continuity of memory defines identity. If you can remember your past self's experiences, that's you. But David Hume took it further. He claimed the self is an illusion, a bundle of perceptions with no core behind them, just a series of passing thoughts loosely stitched together. Now consider this thought experiment. Imagine you could slowly swap every neuron in your brain, one by one, with an artificial replacement. Each new part behaves exactly like the original. You think the same thoughts, feel the same feelings, but eventually, nothing biological remains, just a perfect synthetic structure. Are you still you? Or imagine another version of yourself uploaded into a computer. Every synapse, every twitch of personality, perfectly simulated. If it talks like you, remembers like you, and loves pineapple pizza like you, controversial. Is it you? Scientists still argue whether identity lies in continuity, consciousness, or something deeper, like a soul, a pattern, or a story. Is your self tied to your body, your mind, or just the way your experience unfolds? And here's where it gets poetic. Even now, as you rest, your cells are changing. Your memories are rearranging. Your personality is quietly shifting, shaped by dreams, distractions, and maybe a podcast or two. And yet, you remain. That thread of you-ness weaves through every version. Maybe it's not a fixed core, but a trajectory, a path, not a point. Think back to Theseus' ship, remember? The one we rebuilt piece by piece. That ship didn't need to be made of its original boards to still be the ship. You're the same, reassembled daily from sleep, meals, thoughts, laughter, and the passing of time. So tonight, let yourself drift gently. Let the version of you who worried yesterday dissolve. Let the version who'll rise tomorrow rest quietly in potential. You're not a thing. You're a story. And stories don't need to stay the same to still be true. You drift now into the deepest stillness, your limbs soft, your breath steady, and somewhere just beyond the veil of waking thought, another idea flickers. What if this isn't real? Welcome to the simulation paradox, a rabbit hole wrapped in pixels where your world might not be a world at all, but a codebase, a construct, a remarkably detailed illusion running on something else's hardware. Let's start with the unsettling logic of it. In 2003, philosopher Nick Bostrom famously proposed that if any advanced civilization could run vast numbers of realistic computer simulations of ancestors, of environments, of entire consciousnesses, then statistically, most conscious beings would live inside simulations, not in base reality, which means you're more likely to be simulated than not. If that made your stomach flutter slightly, congratulations, you're still running correctly. Mainstream fact. Simulation theory has gained traction in both philosophy and science, not because it's been proven, but because it's so hard to disprove. It fits unsettlingly well with everything we know and everything we don't. What we experience as reality is already filtered through senses, perception, memory, and cognition. Your brain doesn't interface with the world directly. It interprets signals. Light becomes sight. Vibrations become sound. It's all translation. So what if the signals are just data? Quirky, twist? In physics, the universe already seems digital in some ways. Matter comes in discrete units, quanta. Space and time may not be infinitely divisible, but made of tiny, indivisible pieces. Even Planck units, the smallest possible chunks of space and time, act like resolution settings on reality. Some scientists speculate that the fabric of the cosmos resembles a computational grid. There are experiments trying to detect pixelation in space-time, like lag in a cosmic rendering engine. But here's the catch. If the simulation is good enough, we'll never know. Any attempt to detect it could be part of the code. The entire idea is wrapped in a self-camouflaging paradox. Scientists still argue whether simulation theory is even scientific. If it can't be tested, can it be called a theory at all? Or is it just modern metaphysics dressed up with GPU specs? Either way, it's become part of our cultural imagination. Films, games, books, all filled with characters questioning the walls of their world. And who could blame them? But let's zoom back in. You, in your bed, in your room, surrounded by softness and shadows. Does it matter? If your life were a simulation, would your memories feel less real? Would the warmth of a hug mean less? Would your favorite song stop mattering? The paradox isn't about discovering the truth. It's about living with the mystery. And maybe the most human response to this unsettling question is stunningly simple. So what? Whether code or carbon, your thoughts are yours. Your pain, your laughter, your dreams, they're real to you. That's what matters. Not the origin, but the experience. So tonight, let go of the code. Let the simulation, if it exists, run smoothly in the background. Let the pixels soften and the questions blur, and sleep. Because simulated or not, this is your world, and it's beautiful. You've wandered so far now, through paradoxes and riddles, through time loops, logical spirals, and maybe even artificial realities. And yet, somehow, you're still here, still breathing, still you. But before we let go, there's one last paradox to nestle gently into your thoughts. The paradox of paradoxes. It begins innocently. Some paradoxes are false. Some are true. But what about the set of all paradoxes? Does that set include itself? Let's say we define a paradox as a statement, problem, or situation that defies logic or creates a contradiction. A classic twist in the rules. Fine. There are many. You've just met 20 of them. But what happens when you ask, is the set of all paradoxes itself a paradox? If yes, then it must contradict itself somehow. If no, then why isn't it in its own set? It's like a bookshelf that holds all books that don't mention themselves. Does that bookshelf belong on the shelf? This is a higher order self-reference trap, a meta-paradox, a final loop, and it raises a question that's been quietly whispering beneath everything tonight. Can logic ever fully explain itself? Mainstream thinkers have wrestled with this in every field. From Gödel, who showed that no consistent system can prove all its truths using its own rules, to Turing, who proved some problems are fundamentally undecidable by machines. The boundaries of reasoning have boundaries. Every system, when you poke it hard enough, starts to wobble. And when you zoom out far enough, even reason itself begins to shimmer like a mirage. Quirky detail? Some philosophers call this semantic ascent, moving up a level from discussing things to discussing the discussions themselves. At some point, even your questions have questions. Your puzzles contain puzzles, and you're just a traveler walking the Mobius strip of thought. Scientists still argue how useful these meta-paradoxes are. Are they brain candy, or do they reveal deep truths about consciousness, reality, and language? The answer, like many good paradoxes, seems to be both and neither. And now, here's the gentle realization. That's okay. You've held 20 paradoxes tonight. Some funny, some cosmic, some deeply strange. And yet, none of them demanded a solution. Because paradoxes aren't errors in the system. They are the system, pushing, testing, stretching the rules just enough to show us the edges. And those edges, that's where wonder lives. So maybe the paradox of paradoxes isn't meant to be feared, but appreciated, like a mirror held up to a mirror, not for clarity, but for infinite depth. So let your thoughts loosen now. Let the loops uncurl, the riddles dissolve. You've earned a break from thinking. Let the mind step away from the edge. Let the questions sleep. And now, with every breath a little deeper, every thought a little slower, let yourself drift gently into the quiet. The paradoxes can rest. The questions will wait. For now, there is only stillness, the soft weight of the blanket, the hum of silence, the hush of unhurried thought. You've walked far tonight, through riddles and mysteries, through infinite loops and timeless puzzles, and now it's time to let go. Let the story fade, the symbols blur, and your mind nestle softly into the dark. You are safe. You are still. You are enough.